I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools and a large dose of inspiration, this life phase can be a truly exciting and pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's never too late to start taking care of the most important person. Yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you have had a good week and enjoying, if you're in the UK, the most incredible weather I think we've ever had in September. Feels like we're a bit on holiday down here in Brighton and Hove by the coast. So I'm on my own. Well, I'm not on my own. I've still got my 3 children around, but my husband's away for a couple of weeks. He's in Asia for work. And in the past, I always used to dread him going away on these longer work trips because it just meant that I just had more on my plate. I had to do every single dog walk, doing all the things with all the children. But actually now, because my children are that much older, actually it's not that hard at all because they can take themselves places mostly. My daughter still needs a bit of running around. But in fact, I'm quite enjoying the space that it gives me. And I just want you to know that if you're still very much in the thick of it and you're running around after your children, taking them here, there and everywhere, it does get easier. I mean, I've got 2 more weeks left with my eldest before he goes off to university, which I must admit I'm feeling a little bit wobbly about, but, it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. He'll be back before I know it. But, it's amazing how time changes the way that we experience life. And yeah, I'm really enjoying having that time to myself at the moment. Okay, let's get on to this week's episode, which is a return from the brilliant nutritionist, Karen Newby. Karen came on this podcast. I think she was my 4th episode. She was my 3rd guest, and her episode has been so popular. I'm not surprised because Karen has just the most incredible advice, expertise when it comes to all things nutrition and menopause. Since Karen was last on the podcast, she's written a book, which is an absolutely brilliant book, and I'll put the link to it in the show notes, and I really do recommend it. It's called The Natural Menopause Method, a nutritional guide to perimenopause and beyond. It's a beautiful book, and it gives you really everything you need to know about achieving nutritional balance to, as she said, this is what she says on the back of the book. So achieving a nutritional balance to support flagging vitality and celebrate the potential of your midlife. It really does that as well. It's a holistic guide to perimenopause and menopause through the lens of nutrition. And she has so much fantastic advice in here. Karen has over 10 years experience coaching women through menopause. She's a huge believer in the beneficial effect that food can have on alleviating the symptoms of the menopause. And I totally do agree with her. It's all very realistic, the advice that she gives. It's all totally doable. She talks about it in a way that makes you believe that you can do it. So without further ado, please welcome the absolutely brilliant Karen Newby. I am delighted today to have Karen Newby back on the podcast. So this is the first guest I've had as a return visitor. So Karen, thank you for joining me again.
Lovely to be here, Polly. Thanks for having me.
I was just saying to you, Karen, that your episode, which I think was episode 3 of the podcast, which we recorded over a year ago, is the 2nd most downloaded podcast after the 1st episode. So people obviously loved it and love learning from you because you've got so much to share. So we're going to dive more into some of that again today. Since we spoke, Karen, you have brought out your book, The Natural Menopause Method, which I have here, which I have got to say is the most beautiful book, firstly. I just love the colours. I love the illustrations. It's laid out in such an easy to read and understand way. And what I love about it is it's so your voice. It says I can sort of read the pages and it's like you're speaking, because I've heard you obviously talk quite a lot, and it really is. And I really, really do love it. And I think it's an amazing resource for women. And I think today it'd be really nice if we could talk a little bit about the 4 shifts which you talk about in your book, which are really there to help women transition through perimenopause into menopause and help to get used to, I suppose, those lower levels of hormones. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how you came up with these 4 shifts and why.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much about your kind words about the book. I was very fortunate to work with a wonderful illustrator and production team that have created something that I feel is very feminine without using the color pink. And that I wanted something that was very easy for women to get their head around, because obviously menopause is a time when we feel incredibly overwhelmed. And we're dealing with a huge life load often. I always say menopause is hard, but it comes at a time when life is hard too. So for me, the book was important to be sort of the ability for people to dip in and out if they needed to. But on top of that, to give women a sort of a framework really to work to, in order to future-proof our body, regardless if you're on HRT or not, but also a way of easing symptoms naturally. I've always said that I'm not anti-HRT at all. I'm personally not on HRT myself, but a lot of my clients are. I think HRT, is very much part of that menopause toolkit, and that we shouldn't feel guilty about taking it. However, I am passionate about my trade as a nutritional therapist and how food and lifestyle medicine can help to sort of rewire us, really, because I think what happens at menopause is I often say that sort of hormonal shift of estrogen and progesterone is kind of like the match that kind of starts the fuse of huge amounts of changes, which even if you're on HRT, and this is the reason why HRT doesn't solve all of our issues, because it's so widespread. And I think for many of us, we haven't listened to our body or looked after ourselves or nourished ourselves for many, many years, because we're looking after everyone else. That we get to menopause, and this is why we suffer so much, because of life load. I think that's why, versus how our mothers went through it, that there's a lot of things that we need to reset, which is why the natural menopause method is something that I'm really passionate about, because it's a sort of a 4-step process, really, in order to rewire the body. And you'll notice, right at the start of the book, I've done a big sort of symptom tracker, and I want women to track their symptoms before going through these 4 steps and afterwards. And I am confident that all of those symptoms will have come towards the better end of the scale, because this is how I work in clinic. My book is really sort of the closest you'll get to a one-to-one session with me, really, because this is my process. So the 4 shifts are split into 4 areas. And for some women, these areas might be more prevalent to them than others. And this is why you can sort of dip into the shifts that are most relevant to you. But the first shift is called reset. And the first shift is all about stress. And the reason it's number 1 is because I think most women are dealing with a huge amount of stress, and stress loves menopause symptoms. Stress can cause all kinds of issues in the body, things like weight gain, things like, inflammation, aches and pains, anxiety, low mood, poor digestion. All of these things can very much be exacerbated at menopause. But stress is something that everyone knows what stress is, but nobody knows what it is, and it affects us all very differently. So that's my first area. And actually, the reset area isn't about suddenly going to live on a desert island with no stress, because that's not realistic. And I am very much a realist. It's about how to deal with stress better. how to become more resilient, although I hate the word resilience. But so that's the first section. The second section is called cleanse, which is all about digestion. We are what we digest, not what we eat. I mean, you could be eating the best diet in the world, but if you're not digesting it, it's a complete waste of time. And as I said, stress can affect our digestive system. So this is why often at menopause we get things like bloating or reflux or food intolerances and allergies that we've never suffered with before. So I talk about digestion in that section, but also I talk about the liver and the gut. So within the book, within this cleanse, there is actually a 2-week cleanse, which can help support our liver and our gut, because these two organs are incredibly important when it comes to hormone balancing, when it comes to our mental well-being, and all kinds of things. And then the third section is sleep. So for me, for example, sleep has never been an issue. I haven't been affected by it, but I know so many women and clients that have basically got menopausal insomnia, or go to sleep fine, but wake up 3 o'clock, busy head, can't sleep, can't get back to sleep. So these two big areas that I address in that, because actually if we're not sleeping, then we're going to wake up feeling stressed, because lack of sleep is also a stressor, and actually stress massively impacts sleep. And then we're going to choose we're not going to want to eat broccoli. We're going to want to eat, refined carbohydrates and drink lots of caffeine. So sleep is incredibly important. And then we go on to eat. So actually my what to eat section is the fourth shift, because, a lot of my industry is kind of signed off by, if you eat a balanced diet, whatever a balanced diet means these days, then you'll be fine. Just eat a balanced diet when you're going through menopause. Well, actually, it's not actually, it is about what you're eating, absolutely. But also it's about addressing these really important areas like stress, like blood sugar, like inflammation, like digestion, like sleep. And then you come on to the eat section. So, in my eat section, it's, what to eat, how to eat, how to eat mindfully, for example. And, then the latter part, the sort of the last third section, is all about troubleshooting. So that's when you can dip in and look at specific symptoms. But what I've done in the troubleshooting section is I'm referring back to, well, if you're getting lots of aches and pains, you need to then refer back to the reset section where you're looking at stress, cortisol, inflammation. Or if you're fatigued in the troubleshooting section, you need to then look back to blood sugar balancing and those highs and lows of feeling hangry and how that completely drains you of energy. So I suppose my four kind of shifts are all interrelated, really. And I don't think that, and I'm a big believer that if you get those things right, if you get yourself back into feeling more resilient, if you get your digestive system purring away, if you get your sleep sorted, if you're eating nutrient dense and therapeutic foods, then a lot of that troubleshooting, a lot of those symptoms go.
Yeah.
So that's my premise.
Yeah, and I think it's all just, it all makes so much sense. And as you said, they are all so interrelated. And you can, as you're reading through your book, you can really see that, because there is so much overlap that actually, if you go through to the second bit, the cleanse bit, and you kind of recommend some, vegetables and foods which you can eat, they overlap so much with the phytoestrogens to eat later on in the book, and then all the nutrient dense foods. So actually, although it seems like there's a lot, actually it's not. It's actually much more simple than we think it is. It's really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There is a lot of overlap, and that's why I think it's important to deal with those front sections, because actually even before you get to the eat bit, like you say, there's a lot of, I am talking about food obviously in the first 3 sections as well, absolutely, but actually once you get to the eat bit, you're like, okay, well, I kind of know now what I need to be eating, because not only is this food good for me therapeutically, just for hormone balancing, it's actually good for my sleep, or these certain foods are. These foods are great for my blood sugar. This is great for my anti-inflammatories. This is going to fit. These foods are great for my adrenal glands, which is going to help my stress resilience. So absolutely, it's the premise of food as medicine. And as I say, there's no such thing as a vitamin C tree. It's this wonderful kind of concept, which, I love in my world, is that food is information. Food gives us, you can take an omega-3 supplement. Great, I take an omega-3 supplement, but that's only going to be giving you omega-3, DHA, EPA, whatever. It's not going to be, if you have oily fish, if you have some salmon, then if you eat the skin, you're going to be getting some vitamin D. You're going to be getting B vitamins. You're going to be getting protein, and you'll be getting the omega-3s. And also the body takes what it needs as well. So you don't ever have to worry about, am I taking too much or too little or whatever. And I think for many of us, we've forgotten, really, we're so disconnected from food because our life is so disconnected from the seasons. It's disconnected from, eating in season. It's even the fact that everything's processed, everything, we're not eating plants, we're eating food made in a plant, as Michael Pollan once said in one of his books. So also, because we're so stressed, all of our food choices have to be kind of immediate, which is why we're eating less cooked from scratch, and why we have to whack things into the oven and pre-prepared stuff, because we don't give ourselves enough time to eat, or we're eating on the go, or we're eating in front of a screen, or we're not eating. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
So many women that I see in practice are, struggling with weight and not eating anything and feel miserable.
Yeah, let's talk about the weight, because if we focus on the fact that first shift, the reset, you talk in that bit about how cortisol affects weight. You call it the worry waste. Maybe you could just talk us through that, because I think a lot of people don't know this.
Yeah. So I think the diet industry sets women up to fail because they don't take into account these hormonal roadblocks that are going on, especially at menopause. So when we have lots of stress in our life, and, let's not forget that menopause is happening at a time when, for those of us with children, we've got teenagers in the house, or we've got young children in the house. My mother had me at 23. I had left home. I had left university, and I was living away from home. That's when she went through menopause. So for us, I'm dealing with 2 teenage boys in the house. I mean, that is a real heady mix.
Yeah.
We're dealing with loss, we're dealing with divorce, we're dealing with wheels falling off our parents, we're dealing with, friends that are in need of our help as well. It's a really intense time of our life. And men, obviously they're going through that as well, but they're not having these emotional and physical changes at the same time. So the worry waste, as it's often called, is when we have this kind of fat that sort of goes around the middle, that suddenly we're losing our waist. And no matter how much calorie restriction or exercise, this just doesn't shift. And the reason is because there's this hormonal roadblock. And, the more stress we have, the more the body thinks it's in constant states of stress. The more it lays down blood sugar into fat cells near to the liver, where it can be converted back quickly into glucose when we next have this kind of stress event, because cortisol triggers the release of stored glucose from our liver. And that's why the body thinks it's being clever. It's like, okay, this vessel is constantly in fight or flight, even though it doesn't recognize the difference between sat at our desk getting stressed at work versus being, having to run away from a wild animal. Our bodies are 20,000 years old and our brains are 20,000 years old, and they can't distinguish the difference. And this is why, for me, weight loss is never about calorie restriction, and it's never about, loads of cardio, for example. So weight training is much better to lose fat, especially around the middle. It's about tricking the body into releasing that weight. And the best way to do that is to help support your adrenals. The other reason for this, or to support your stress response, and these adrenals that I keep going on about, these little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, are actually our ovary backups as our ovaries start to quieten. So this is another reason why I think women suffer so much, our generation, because we're so stressed, because our adrenals are kicking out stress hormone, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, as well as a weaker form of estrogen and progesterone. So this is why this sort of heady mix of the body is in survival mode. It will prioritize survival over reproduction, which is why before our menopause, which is why our periods might stop if we were really stressed. The adrenals will still produce estrogen and progesterone, but it's not optimized. And the other thing is that if we're very stressed, our adrenals quieten our thyroid. And this is the big thing. I need to get to your thyroid in order to support good metabolic rates. But if we're incredibly stressed, the adrenals are like, needs to sort of down-regulate our metabolism because it can't deal with this huge metabolic rate. So, cortisol sort of down-regulates systems, including, parts of our endocrine, part of our hormone system. So it's, and this is why I can't bear the Slimming Worlds and Weight Watchers, because they are constantly talking about, eat as much pasta as you like, eat as much rice as you like. This is all really refined carbohydrates, which is, our ability to deal with insulin. And we haven't got on to blood sugar, but, blood sugar is a massive issue. But this is just fueling this kind of this stress, as opposed to more protein and more nutrient dense food, more vitamin C. When we're stressed, we need more vitamin C. And this helps to sort of shift the body. I want all of us to be in rest and digest mode and not in fight or flight. And I think for most of us, and in my book, I've got a sort of a tick list of how stressed you are. And I think for most of us, we're like, yeah, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's about, because let's not forget, we do need a little bit of stress. We need cortisol. It's very important to keep us safe, and we need it to help us get out of bed in the morning. We need it to stop us from running out into that car on the road. But what we want is that flexibility of our nervous system. Our nervous system seems to be so stuck in that fight or flight mode that actually we want it to train it to get that flexibility back, so that once that stress response is finished, we can then go back into that parasympathetic rest and digest. And that's the problem. We're just not able to do that. In your book, you did talk about, there are so many things we can do, but you've mentioned some of the foods that we can eat. Blood sugar balance is also such a big piece of this as well, isn't it? A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
And, the reason why blood sugar imbalances become more of an issue at menopause is because we have these metabolic changes that happen because estrogen is involved with keeping us insulin sensitive, i.e., our cells are able to respond to insulin and take the glucose out of the bloodstream into our fat cells. Whereas as estrogen starts to kind of go high and low, we can get more sort of heightened blood sugar, which can then affect our fats, which can almost make us like pre-diabetic, although, it doesn't. But this is when we suddenly get, insulin is our main storage hormone. And when our blood sugar isn't balanced, this can lead to more weight gain. And actually, the more insulin we have in the body, or the more high blood glucose we've got in the body, because the cells aren't sensitive to insulin so much, this can, really affect things like our hunger hormone decreases because of that. So there's lots of, as I said, estrogen highs and then lows as we plummet towards our body getting used to lower levels, can really affect our blood sugar balance, which is why a lot of women suddenly become hangry, they get shaky, faint, they have this kind of hypoglycemia kind of reactions. So every time we feel those things, like feeling hangry, shaky, faint, this is a sign of low blood sugar. And when we get a low in blood sugar, this then stimulates the body to produce cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline to bring the blood sugar back up. So however stressed you are, so even if you're not stressed, you can still be causing stress, i.e. cortisol release from your body because of lows in blood sugar. So for me, one of the biggest ways to help support that worry waste, to help give us a drip feed of energy, is to stop these lows in blood sugar.
Yeah, it's kind of an internal stress, isn't it? It's that which we're just not aware of. And so eating plenty of protein is going to really help with that, reducing eating ultra processed foods, refined carbohydrates. What else?
So for me, my premise is not to sort of strip out sugars. I'm not anti-carb at all. In fact, a little white rice in the evening is shown to help support sleep, because it allows lots of tryptophan to get through the blood-brain barrier. So I'm not anti carbs at all, but I want us to sort of switch to more complex carbohydrates as opposed to refined. But the way that we do that isn't to sort of strip everything out, because that's not realistic either, and it means that we just crave it even more. It's about crowding out that need for refined sugars. And the way that I focus in the book, looking at small shifts, is to work on the first hour of your day. And then because we're really overwhelmed, and I don't want this book and my advice to be I don't want this to be more overwhelming. And I think a lot of women find the whole idea of self-care triggering, and they feel like they're not doing that right and they don't have any time. So I think we can all do this quite effectively, is on waking, have that glass of water, or hot water and lemon, or hot water and ginger. We're dehydrated when we wake up. Not to have that tea or coffee, because that tea and coffee is actually also affecting your blood sugar. It's mobilizing stored glucose to bring lots of energy into the body, which can be quite useful sometimes. But I don't want women hanging off their hormones right at the start of the day, and that immediately shunts you into stress mode, caffeine. So to enjoy your tea and coffee with your breakfast lessens the effect, and to have a protein-rich breakfast. I used to live in Asia, and I loved how in Asia we would eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And even in the UK, we used to have a big English fry up, or a big English breakfast. We would eat as the path of the sun, and we've sort of forgotten that now in the West. We think, some refined carbohydrates from a packet that's been on the shelf for 2 years, and we're not even having full fat milk anymore, is going to somehow sustain us. And we need the fuel at the beginning of the day. And I often say to clients how different you would feel if you had your evening meal for breakfast. We would all feel so much better. So that first hour of the day really helps with blood glucose, because you'll feel more energized. You won't feel the need to have caffeine and snacks mid-morning. You'll be able to go through to lunch. And then this also helps with weight loss, because we're not snacking. And protein is like coal. It gives you a drip feed. It gives you a little bit of heat, more heat than putting petrol onto the fire, which is more like carbohydrates. And that heat creates satiety, and it helps to anchor our hunger. It's like the whole fat thing, fully into full fat, not low fat. It anchors our hunger. We've never been so ill as a nation, or as in the West. And it's not because of the fat, it's because of the sugar.
So let's move on to cleanse, the second shift. And this is all about digestive function, and you also, and your liver function. And you also do talk about when you eat. So just a quick question for you. So you do say, it's really important, it's really good for us to have a fast overnight between 12 to 14 hours. And so I'm presuming that the fast is better to start from the early evening all the way to the morning, so that you could load up your morning with the majority of your food. Yes. So it's kind of working backwards, isn't it, to what we're used to.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of us who fast, or who, do the intermittent fasting, a lot of people actually just use that as an excuse of skipping breakfast. But they'll also have coffee or tea for breakfast instead. That's all they'll have. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm fasting 16 hours or whatever. And, tea and coffee takes you out of your fast, even if you haven't got milk in it, because it's mobilizing that stored glucose. So then you're creating heightened glucose zooming around your body, which is giving you lots of energy. But then insulin is then released in order to get the glucose out of the bloodstream back into the cells. So you're not fasting. And I think that is a bit of a kind of a myth I think it's kind of more for time restricted eating. I suppose you could get away with having your caffeine. But anyway, so for me, it is all about eating as the path of the sun, like I said, and to have a lighter evening meal, to finish everything around 7 o'clock, give your digestive system a break. Remember, the liver is very much part of the digestive system. It's where we digest fats. It's also, very much about cholesterol balancing as well. Cholesterol can go out of whack because of estrogen helps with our fat processing. That's another issue. But there's lots that we can do. And of course, the gut is part of the digestive system because it's our multi-nutrient. It's where all of our nutrients are absorbed. So if you give all of this wonderful system a break, you will wake up feeling hungry, because I think, that's the big part of that part within cleanse is the fact people aren't hungry when they wake up. So of course you're not going to eat breakfast if you're not hungry. Whereas for me, two big parameters for health is feeling refreshed and feeling hungry, because I want you to, breakfast for me is my favorite meal of the day. I wake up and I'm excited about my breakfast. And I'm excited about, I don't drink caffeine anymore, but, and I'm not the caffeine police. Please don't feel that I'm really not. But, if you have your coffee, then you can look forward to that with your breakfast. But it is about fueling yourself when you need it, because if you're trying to lose weight and you're backloading all of your calories, for want of a better word, to the end of the day, they're more likely to be just laid down as fat, because you're not moving. You're just sort of sitting on the sofa.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so with you. Breakfast is by far one of my favorite parts of the day. I don't drink coffee anymore, but I do drink a cup of tea, but I make sure I have that with my breakfast, and I love it so much. I really do savor it because I know it's going to be my only cup of tea. Occasionally I might have a second one, but not often. But yeah, and I like you, I have so much energy until lunchtime. I don't have any need to snack at all and then I'll have my lunch. And yeah, I mean, I still do tend to probably cook two bigger meals in the evening, although I don't eat them as big, only because the kids and everyone's coming in from school and they, big strapping boys need to eat. But I've had to kind of consciously say to myself, actually, I don't need to eat all of that as much as I used to eat, because I'm having such a good breakfast. So yeah, I love all of that. So let's go on. I'm just conscious of the time. We could talk about so many different things, Karen. Let's just touch on the liver and how important it is to really treat it well. Maybe you could tell us, why it's so important, particularly during perimenopause and menopause.
Well, the liver is the major multitasker organ of the body, a bit like us, really. It's got lots and lots of different roles and responsibilities. But one of its main roles is for processing hormones and for detoxifying estrogen, for example, making sure that is converted to its kind of safer sisters and eliminated via the gut, some via the urine, but mostly via the gut. That's the kind of the phase 3 of detoxification by the gut. But there's two main phases of detoxification in the liver, and we want both of those phases to be working in balance. And I think for many of us, our liver, I liken the liver as a kind of guttering system, really, like in a house. All of the kind of the gutters need to be nice and clear so that all of the water or the alcohol that we might pour through it is detoxified through phase 1 and phase 2 and then into phase 3 down into the gut. But for a lot of us, that isn't happening very effectively. There's lots of reasons why that might not be effective. For example, lots of alcohol. Alcohol is prioritized by the liver to be detoxified before anything else. And that's why alcohol can become quite self-limiting at menopause. As it becomes more sort of the hangovers become more painful. But things like any kind of ultra processed foods, lots of refined fats. The liver is in charge of digesting fats. If we've got a lot of fats in our diet, of like not helpful fats, that can give the liver more work to do. And obviously, the liver is in charge of detoxifying medications and caffeine. So caffeine can really upregulate phase 1 the detoxification system. But actually then if phase 2 isn't also upregulated, this can create more free radicals, which causes more inflammation. From a Chinese traditional medicine perspective, when I've heard the acupuncturists that I work with talk about the liver, often they talk about sort of a heated liver, where, and I love that approach, because it is, from a biochemical perspective, a similar thing where the liver almost is creating too much heat. It's kind of backed up. It's like, like a clogged guttering system, for want of a better word. So the liver is also, if you can help support your liver, it can really help with your sleep. From a Chinese traditional medicine perspective, the liver is the organ of anger. And if we don't detoxify estrogen successfully, heightened estrogen or unopposed estrogen can cause lots of menopausal symptoms, such as, we always think about estrogen as being low at menopause, whereas actually it can be quite high versus progesterone, or high because we have lots of xenoestrogens and we're swimming in a sea of estrogen. So this is something that I talk about in this section. And I've talked about it actually earlier on as well, about this concept of estrogen dominance or unopposed estrogen. So if you're getting lots of PMS, if you're getting lots of kind of breast tenderness and water retention and lots of anger, so heightened estrogen can actually downregulate an enzyme called MAO, which gets rid of adrenaline and noradrenaline. So if we've got a lot of unopposed estrogen, we can be quite ragey. And that's why if you help support the liver, this can help detoxify this excess estrogen. And another reason why we might get heightened estrogen is constipation. So if you're constipated, things are then going to be going back via the liver. We have an enzyme in our gut called beta-glucuronidase, which actually then recirculates estrogen if you're constipated, and also if estrogen is low. But estrogen can then get taken back via the liver into the bloodstream, which then creates more estrogen loading. So that's why the liver is so important.
So in order to support it, you talk about early morning having some lemon water every morning, which I actually do pretty much every morning. Although, Karen, I've been a bit worried that it is damaging to my teeth, because I keep hearing this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's reassuring, because I did hear someone say, oh, what you should do is have a teaspoon of olive oil to coat your teeth, and then which I thought, I don't think I want to do that. But I mean, I've been having lemon and water pretty much every morning for quite a number of years, and I think my teeth are okay.
And your enamel and your teeth look amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb is just not to brush your teeth within half an hour, because actually the saliva helps to recalibrate everything in the mouth. And I kind of, it makes sense to me, because we have lots of acidic things in our diet. And to me, my dentist is more worried about sugar than, one lemon water a day. I wouldn't put lemon in water. I just have straight water. But, if, as I say, if you don't brush your teeth, then that remineralization will happen.
So you slice the lemon up and put that in the water. You don't squeeze it into the water.
I don't squeeze it. No, I'm not sort of squeezing lemon. It's just a slice of lemon. It's very gentle.
Yeah.
And it's really just, the reason I have it is because it feels nice. Mm-hmm. Might I be getting some vitamin C from that lemon? I'm not sure. I don't use it for that. I just find it really cleansing and really, it just feels nice. Feels really hydrating. You can have, a couple of slices of ginger in there instead, if you don't want to do the lemon, or even just some warm water, or even just a glass of room temperature water is fine. It will do the job. But I've had it for many years. I don't have any issues with my teeth. But I know there is chatter out there about it, but it's not something
So, and also in your book, you list so many different foods which are very cleansing for our liver as well, namely brassicas.
Yeah, so the brassicas are really important family, which have something in them called indole-3 carbinol, which help with that estrogen detoxification. For many of us who have had breast cancer, estrogen-sensitive breast cancer, this is incredibly important. I think for all of us, it's incredibly important to make sure that, that estrogen is all of our hormones that are being detoxified effectively. Brassicas also have sulfur in them, and sulfur is really important for another detoxification, for sulfation. And obviously they're, great sources of magnesium and vitamin C and iron and all of those things. That's, again, the wonderful thing about this food is information about it giving you lots of different things at the same time, as opposed to taking an indole 3 carbinol supplement, as it were. But the other thing with the liver is to keep yourself hydrated, which, again, hurried women syndrome. We often don't drink water because we're just rushing around all day, and we're often thinking, oh, I must drink some water. And we don't. So that's another big thing. But just to help support it with just lots of greens, any kind of green leafy vegetables, things like, artichoke, dandelion tea, nettle, any kind of antioxidant rich plants. It's basically just plants. And the great thing is about the plants is that it will also draw excess cholesterol out of the body as well. If you have got that kind of estrogen triggered heightened cholesterol, but it will help you sleep better. I can't tell you how much helping support your liver helps with sleep.
Yeah, and I know for sure that when I drink alcohol, I have got to be prepared that I am going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I always do. And I know that's because my liver is very busy at that time, detoxifying my whole system. And it happens pretty much every time. So not drinking alcohol and being kind to my liver, I know I'm going to get a better night's sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again the traditional Chinese medicine kind of 24-hour clock. They have the liver as being the most active between the hours of 2 and 3. There is more research going into chrononutrition, certainly from the pharmaceutical industry, as to when is the best time to take certain medications. So we haven't got any double-blind placebo-controlled trials at the moment to suggest that the liver is the most active, because obviously the liver, all of our organs are active all the time, but it does seem to be that time. And again, the reason why I got into studying a degree in nutritional medicine is because I was shadowing an Ayurvedic practitioner for a while. And these, again, with Chinese traditional medicine, they're 5,000-year-old systems of healthcare, which the West is kind of catching up with. But the West is so obsessed with the double-blind placebo-controlled trial that unless it has one of those, it's almost like, oh, it's not science.
Let's skip out on rest, because I think last time when we chatted, we talked quite a lot about sleep. Let's just skip to your final shift, which is eating in order to get those nutrients into us, in the fact that the food nowadays just isn't nutrient rich. And I love how you say, and I know this is kind of talked out about by other people as well, that eating 30 plants a week is going to help you with kind of filling your system with those nutrients that you need. And it can kind of all link so nicely with all the other parts again, because if we eat our diverse range of plants, then we're going to be, helping our digestion. We're going to be helping all the other systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our gut relies on lots of plants to help beneficial bacteria, and our gut is our second brain. So that's going to help your mental well-being, which can often, go out at menopause. Eating 30 plus unique plants a week, which can include herbs and spices and legumes and whatever, vegetables, fruit, nuts and seeds, that is quite attainable if you cook from scratch more.
Yeah.
For me, when I look at patients' food diaries, none of my patients' food intake is bad. No one's eating loads of takeouts and loads of fried food and, loads of whatever monster Red Bulls or whatever, but it's just they're always really low in nutrients apart from their evening meal. So often the evening meal will be something that will be cooked in some form, even if it's something that's been put in the oven. There will still be some vegetables there or some potatoes or whatever, but for the whole of the rest of the day they might have had some toast and jam or Marmite or whatever, or not had breakfast. Then they've been snacking on rubbish. Lunch will be a sandwich or something like a wrap or something glutinous, which doesn't keep us satisfied. So for me, it is about focusing actually on breakfast and lunch, what to eat. And, there's lots of ideas in the book in order to optimize our nutrition throughout the whole day. And if you are going to snack, what snacks can we have that are more nutrient dense, that are going to satisfy our hunger? And I also talk about emotional eating as well, because a lot of the time hunger is not satisfied by eating because we're eating out of boredom or stress or whatever. So, I do talk about reasons behind that as well. But for me, it is about thinking about every mouthful of food. Is this nutrient dense? And it does take, I still am a believer that breakfast doesn't need to be a mission. As well as your evening meal and as well as lunch. I'm a big leftover lunch person, always making more in the evening to have leftovers, so I don't have to think about lunch as much as I can. But breakfast, eggs don't take long to cook, or avocado on toast, or, for those of us who are hybrid working, some, grilled mushrooms and tomatoes with your avocado or with your poached egg. To have when you're having your porridge, to add in ground linseed, which is phytoestrogens, which is, phytoestrogens are a big family of food that I'm very much, for those of us not taking HRT, they are really helpful to help block those kinds of highs and lows of estrogen, and these things like ground linseed and all the tofu, tempeh, miso, edamame beans, etc. But having ground linseed on your which is protein rich as well, it's got the lignans for phytoestrogens, but it's going to make your complex carbohydrates of your oats be more protein rich. Adding in some grated ginger onto your birch or onto your porridge, adding in cinnamon, which is going to help with your blood sugar balancing, adding in whatever fruits are in season. Figs at the moment are great. And then suddenly you've got like at least 6 different plants that you're having at breakfast, as opposed to gluten if you're having Weetabix.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So ever since our first episode, I don't know when I spoke to you about the ground linseed from the linseed farm. I mean, I buy it all the time now. I put it on my breakfast every single morning. Everybody in the family has it. Yeah. And, a handful of sunflower seeds, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, you're kind of getting all of that straight away, first thing in the morning. And you just know that it's just so nice to know that you're doing your body, you're fueling your body with goodness before 10 o'clock. It's great. I love it.
Absolutely.
Karen, is there anything you feel I've missed, which you'd like to mention before I ask you my final question?
Well, just in when it comes to cooking and food, I want listeners to know that actually thinking about what to cook every evening for the rest of your life is exhausting, and I find that exhausting as well, even as a nutritionist. But there are ways to make it easier for you. And, for me, it isn't about batch cooking, because I feel, batch cook, you need to eat the season, you need to think about in the morning what you fancy eating that evening. And I've never been one for batch cooking. So my kind of really easy rules of thumb is to make sure that you've got stuff in your cupboard, that you've got all your herbs, you've got your spices, you've got your pulses. Tin pulses is fine, don't need to soak them. That you've got things like harissa paste in the fridge and miso paste, that you've got fresh fruit and veg and all your proteins in the freezer, making the most of your freezer. And then in the morning you can think about, okay, what do I fancy eating? And then you can take out from the freezer your protein. You can make sure that you've got all the ingredients there. And I don't and then you can pop out if you need to at some time in the day to get things. Because the worst thing is at 5 o'clock to think, okay, what am I going to eat? That is never going to end well.
No.
So it's just getting into a little bit of a habit, and for you and your partner or your children at home, to take it in turns to cook, and to think, okay, at 5 o'clock, I am going to stop work and I am going to start preparing food, and actually being tough on boundary setting at work. And think, right, this is my time of nourishment, that I have to take this time to create something. It doesn't, and I'm never about spending any more than 45 minutes from start to finish on an evening meal. But I do think it's important to actually use it as a time of, okay, I need to fuel myself and my family. Food is love, food is community. Stop scrolling, stop working. The work is always going to be there. That to-do list is always going to be there. And that this is an important time.
Yeah, gosh, I love that so much. And actually I needed to hear that as well. Because, like all of us, you're right. Particularly when you've got a family, it can just feel relentless, the constant cooking, the kind of what's for dinner question, and you're like, oh God, I don't know, and then especially if you've got kids, that they all like different things. And so it's good to remind ourselves that actually we've got to find some sort of joy and pleasure in it, and it doesn't have to be difficult, and it is all about fueling ourselves and nourishing ourselves in a way which is going to make us feel as good as possible. So yeah, I really like that. I did ask you this last time, I'm sure, but this is my final question, which is, because it's called the Positive Perimenopause Podcast, I like to give the listeners one practical, actionable takeaway tip, which you have already given so many. But if there was just one today, what would it be?
I think it would be to focus on that first hour of the day. It's a positive, because what you'll notice is a subtle rewiring that happens. And that is really exciting, to feel that, oh, I'm not running on empty, and I actually have energy at 11 a.m. and I don't want more caffeine, and I don't want to have snacks. And then what happens is that then you think, okay, food can be my medicine, and food can help me here. And that, to me, that's terribly rewarding, because it's my trade to see women go through that transformation of like, oh my God, it's nothing that I've done. It's them, that you do it. Your kitchen can be your pharmacy. And don't get me wrong, modern medicine is amazing. I'd be useless in an A&E department. But, I think we've forgotten how amazing food can be to help us.
Thank you so much for coming back again on the podcast. If people want to buy your book, if they want to find out more about you, hear what's coming up, where should they come?
Available in all good bookstores, available in the States as well, in Canada. And KarenNewby.com is my website.
Brilliant. Karen, as ever, so much amazing advice and wisdom. So thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed chatting today.
Thanks for having me, Polly.
Here are some of the highlights. Number 1, when the body is in a constant state of stress, we store glucose as fat, especially in the abdominal area, which can cause unwanted weight gain. So managing stress and developing a flexible nervous system is important, particularly if you're looking to lose weight. Number 2, start your day with a glass of lemon water or herbal tea instead of caffeine. It's not only good for hydration when you wake up, but it will also keep you off the blood sugar roller coaster. Number 3, eat a protein-rich breakfast to support your body's natural hormonal rhythms and to help keep blood sugar balanced as well. You'll have more energy and less cravings. Number 4, give your digestive system and the liver a break by fasting for 12 to 14 hours overnight. This will support your liver, which has a major role to play in hormone processing and detoxification. Number 5, incorporate liver-friendly foods into your diet, such as the brassicas, which are things like broccoli, cauliflower, sprouts. Number 6, aim to eat at least 30 different plants each week. This diversity can provide your body with essential nutrients and also support the gut. Number 7, make cooking a pleasurable and nourishing experience rather than a chore. So get organised so that you can prepare fresh, nutritious meals in a short amount of time. And number 8, recognise that the food you eat can serve as your medicine. Your kitchen can be your pharmacy, providing you with the nutrients and energy you need to thrive. I am sure you have found so many parts of this conversation useful. Remember, you can get in touch with Karen if you need to. All her details are in the show notes. Or do also feel free to get in touch with me. You can email me at info@pollywarren.com or come over to Instagram at pollywarrencoaching. And I would absolutely be so grateful if you could come over and subscribe or like this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It really will help me out and help this podcast to grow. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, which I am always so grateful for. Thank you again so much for listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. I'm hoping to see lots of you in my workshop on Wednesday.